Hi, good afternoon. I speak to you as a woman without healthcare. I feel almost American. Um, and also, it's 6 years, a couple of days ago, since I sold my first T-shirt and stickers, and the lady happens to be in the room. Uh, I think Anna's still here, is she? Yeah. So I'll talk about the party in a minute and get into the sort of. In fact, I'll start. I haven't planned a perfectly timed speech, so I'm going to make sure I time myself because I don't know if you ever watch anything I do, but sometimes I go off on one. Um, so I realised what was happening, and language obviously is really central to all of it, and the word woman, and I'm not sure many of you know anything that I've ever talked about before. I've talked about how that sort of came, and it was just if you can dilute and erase the word woman from our language, you can give it away to men, and you can cease. It can stop meaning anything at all. And so I did the billboard, and we all know what happened then. And it's interesting. I speak today as somebody with a relatively large platform in this space is sharing a trashing article which names all of my children. Um, and somebody else with a large podcast who's also, I think she might call herself a socialist feminist, but she gave that information out as well. So um, when it comes to my kids, and I don't know if any of you saw what happened on Friday, I'm not very, if you mess with my children, like most of us mothers, I'm not very nice. And in fact, I may lose my temper in a space where I should just hold my tongue. But on Friday, I went into my local GP surgery, um, which is something we all do, and you can't get an appointment in mine. So if you want an appointment at all, you have to turn up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and well, you have to queue from about 7:45 in the morning. So if you're really unwell, you're not getting an appointment because you're not out of bed coming in queuing at the doctor's. And so I was so excited that I'd managed to get to the doctor when it was open to book 3 appointments for myself and two of my children. And the woman was wearing a pronoun he, him badge behind the reception. And this is the second time that I've come across her. And the first time I did it, I complained straight away to the GP. And I was actually there for something relatively serious at that time. And I just said that it just makes me feel really uncomfortable. It doesn't make me feel that I'm particularly safe in this surgery. And she said, well, he, and I said, don't correct my language. It's she. And anyway, so I had the appointment, and when I went this time, I was so buoyant and excited. I got car park space, the whole shebang. I was cloud nine, organized mother. Oh my God, I've got space for this. And then I just felt myself. I just handed the letter, and I just felt my shoulders just go. Oh, when she said, "Is there anything else?" And I was like, yeah, there is. There's appointments. So I don't want to tell you my kids' names now because I just don't really feel safe, and I don't want to tell you what I want an appointment for either. I don't trust that you will keep it because my personal opinion is if you've got a name, if you've got a pronoun badge on, you're an activist. And this was absolutely right when so then I phoned and just said I want that letter not opened by the receptionist. And I spoke to somebody, and then when I started saying to her, it's just not great, is it? That you go to work and I come to your surgery and we've all got to pretend that that woman is a man. And she just said, I don't want to listen to this. And then I said, but you've got people coming in with serious issues. Somebody would be bringing their 10-year-old in with leukemia. She just went, I'm not listening, I'm not listening, I'm not listening, I'm not listening. And so I did swear. But with the receptionist, I just said, that is not an appropriate thing to wear as a receptionist in a GP surgery. And she said, I said, it's a political symbol. And she said, it's not a political symbol. It's nothing to do with my work. So well, don't wear it to work then. If your made up identity is nothing to do with work, don't wear a badge demanding that I go along with it. So anyway, the combination of it was that I'd said I wanted to leave the surgery. I wanted my kids to leave the surgery. I no longer felt safe at the surgery. And then when they phoned me back, this woman who I think was looking for some job satisfaction, did that thing where they wind you up to a point that they can then say you're being rude and abusive, and then they can totally get rid of you. Yeah. And I just feel that is what's happening generally to us all. That little conversation was someone will tell you you have to accept, and if you make a fuss, you're the one that's in the wrong. And unfortunately, I am always therefore going to be in the wrong because I'm always going to make a fuss. I'm never going to be okay. I told a man on a train that I thought his lanyard was terrible. I will just get to the point, and it's been something that's been my whole life, which is why I'm so dreadfully popular. Um, but if something comes to my mind and I dismiss it as I can't say it or I can't do it, my brain goes, God, yeah, just do it. What's the worst that can happen? And apparently it means you get unlisted from your doctor's surgery. But I was asking to leave. So anyway, I just said, would I be allowed to wear a woman adult human female badge? And she avoided the question. So more broadly, that's what's happening to us all the time. That we are basically being stamped in the face, and then we're told that we're not allowed to make even a whimper about it while somebody repeatedly stamps in our faces. And I'm just not okay with that. Since I was a little girl, I'm the one that will go, the emperor's got his penis out. I can see it. We can all see it. You can see it, can't you? Can you just say that you can see it as well? Which is how Let Women Speak quite nicely has suited my personality, which is just go and do it. Just encourage women to speak. And when women often say to me, oh, I can't, oh my, this is happening to my child at school, I don't know what, well, just go and speak. That's what you do. And subsequently, I'm banned from Mumsnet. I can't do Patreon. I have lots of bank accounts refused with both the party and my businesses. What else am I not allowed to? Oh, I'm not allowed to sign a petition on change.org. I'm now not allowed to go into my doctor's surgery. I don't know how that's going to be effective with my son, but I'm going to take them all out anyway. Anyway, so we got to this point with Let Women Speak where you can only go so far of saying to women, come and speak. And I can promise you there is nothing more amazing than being there and watching a woman with trembling hands and shaky voice just start talking. And even if she never gets above kind of a whisper, she said something in that moment that she's been dying to say for God knows how long. And often it's very, very moving, but you just don't know. She might not be able to speak in her sort of in even in her home with her teenage children. I've got many a friend who says, "Oh, my kids are home this weekend. I can't say anything," like on a range of issues. You'll be surprised to learn that doesn't happen in my house. Um, but or it might be at work, or it might just be that you just feel that everywhere you turn, you're in a big old fat episode of Darvo, where you're always the aggressor, saying, please don't treat me like crap. You become the aggressor. So anyway, so Let Women Speak does this incredible thing all over the world where apparently friends turn up and joking. Where people turn up and that's my fault. Men turn up, that's my fault. Women turn up and speak. That's apparently nothing to do with me. The good stuff that comes out of it just it's circumstance. If you read tweets from rather large accounts about after the event, it's like I'm nothing to do with the event and I haven't even attended. And this amazing woman just gives this amazing speech just by happenstance. She just happens to be there that day. So we've got so far with Let Women Speak that it's now evolving to try and plant some serious roots so that I don't just go in and it happens and it's this wonderful event, and it is a wonderful event, but then 5 weeks later, an isolated woman comes out of the woodwork and there is no network for her to join beyond networks that aren't anything to do with me. But there's no sort of Let Women Speak network, solid action-based recruitment goes on when we go and do these things. So that's changing somewhat. I sat outside of school the other day where a woman had just been completely ignored by her school. In fact, had been accused of being abusive for trying to talk about the books that they were giving out and whatever special rainbow type lobby group. was directly influencing children about what they could and couldn't say. So that's one thing I'm doing with that particular hat. With the other hat, I decided what was going to um, really going to make the best difference, the biggest difference. And I decided that, first of all, I was just going to go and run against Keir Starmer on my own, and that was going to be fun. But then I thought, actually, up and down the country, the sort of direct impact that councils have on people, like often we talk about women in prisons, but there are women imprisoned in their own home, elderly women and vulnerable women and women with disabilities that are totally live a life as if they are in prison, and they are routinely ignored. And I don't know about you, but I found the most heartbreaking thing about the lockdown was knowing that some elderly people died without having any human contact whatsoever. And so I thought about those women. I thought about who's entering the homes of those women. How can we make a difference on that? And I thought it was local elections. And we started very small. So it took me 9 months, 9 months and thousands of pounds to get the party registered because we just kept being refused. And I actually copied line by line, I copied other manifestos and constitutions, or constitutions rather, not manifestos, and they were still refused, knowing that you can register a party called the BNP, but I couldn't register a party of women. And anyway, so we registered, and I got a fantastic emblem, which is very narcissistically a posy of flowers. Um, and and then we did the council elections, and those women were just amazing, and they just got themselves organised because we haven't had any fairy godmother money, and it's been everything that I do is through small business enterprises really, and it all relies on people buying merch. Um, and then I just said the general election was coming. It's a snap election. So it's terribly easy, wasn't it, ladies? Um, and I just asked for volunteers, and we got 60. We actually got about 20. One woman had to drop out because she had tried to get nominations because your nominations go public. So she tried to get nominations, and then her business was in jeopardy because she'd had a tenancy for about 12 and a half years, a business tenancy, and then she was told it wouldn't be renewed. A couple of women had to drop out because of family issues. Another woman just felt it was too much exposure and she would have activists at her door. But then some brave women, um, get forward. And I don't think they're just brave for standing on a ticket of Party of Women, but they're also brave enough and see and focused enough or eyes on the prize to not worry about the accusations that might be levied against them for standing with such a bigoted, transphobe, practical Nazi as myself. And I'll just read you, and then maybe both of you could comment on why you did it. So our manifesto was this: no woman has a penis. No man has a vagina. There's no such thing as non-binary. And transitioning children is abuse. And transitioning. And what I visualized, what I really wanted with the party is I knew I wasn't going to get many votes. I stood in Bristol. I was going to stand in Brighton. So I knew I wouldn't get very many votes. That wasn't the point. But I did want to be on that stage at some hustings. And I did. So did these amazing women. And what we did is we sort of were legitimized by that process. And it just meant, I mean, I visualized like billboards. But that wasn't to be because we didn't have enough time. But come the next election or council elections, we'll have so many more women. And we got 5,077 votes between us.
The reason I was because I do actually listen to Kellie-Jay when I do my work, like the radio, and every video was, if not you, then who? If not, every time it was just like, and I said to my husband a couple of times, I said, "Okay, I might, what do you think? Well, maybe I might." And he just went, "Do it. Go on then." And I was like, "Oh no." And then the next video, and then the next video. And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to fill it out. I'm not going to think, I'm just going to fill it out." And then that was it. Then you just, and then we were so supported, weren't we? We were so supported. And Kellie-Jay and their team, the main team, produced the leaflets and everything. And it is still a process we're doing, isn't it? Because we're still now doing the expenses and everything. There's lots of legal stuff that we just didn't know about at all. And all of it we just did together as a unit. I had an awful lot of help with friends, Joe and some friends, and I did enjoy the hustings. Yeah. I did enjoy standing up and saying penis in church. Yeah, I did. Although I didn't get videoed, I did actually do a bit of a rah rah speech, didn't I, Joe? Of your vote is your conscience. And so my speech was more, you need to do the best. You need to be, have integrity. You need to do this. Whereas all the other speeches were more like what their manifestos were, which were a bit boring. So I did enjoy that kind of part of it. I didn't really do much leafleting because obviously it was really short. But I did go around to a lot of coffee shops, and I did go around and speak to an awful lot of people in shops and leave leaflets. And an awful lot of the people around where I did do my campaigning were immensely supportive. And I was very, very lucky. All of the political kind of class where I was were very supportive as well of the fact of having somebody coming up and, a new party. I didn't have any hostility at all, unlike Kellie-Jay. And in fact, in the count, I spoke to the head lady who was organising it all. And I said, I just want more than 100, and then I'll know more than my family have voted for me. And so when they do it, where I was, there was tables. So each party had a table. And when I got my first bundle of 100, she came and got me and said, here's your first bundle of 100. So they were all really, it was a very good experience where I am. Obviously not everyone else had that, but I was very lucky and felt very supportive, and it was good. I would recommend it to others.
Just to echo really what Bernadette was saying, because I remember when I'm a bit hazy about all the dates now, but I'd just come back from holiday, Anne and I had just come back from holiday, and I was sort of I can't remember, when did all the things have to be in? It was all a big rush, wasn't it? And I just remember Anne came in. This sounds really vain, as though I did think, oh, maybe I will get elected. But Anne came in with the local paper saying, I think you should stand because Hugh Merriman's standing down at the next election. I was like, oh, maybe. But I did think, oh, it hadn't really particularly occurred to me up to then, but it just, I suppose I just needed a bit of something to, spur me on. And I thought, oh, it might be a bit more interesting in terms of like the hustings, and because it's not going to be such an obvious, because where I've lived was, we've had like majority of about 20,000, I think, before. And I had seen maybe not quite as many of the videos as Bernadette's seen, but I do remember seeing one, Kellie-Jay, where you were just like going into you were a bit frustrated with everyone, I think, and I it was like directed at me, and she was like, and I'm just going to bring you all along with me if I have to pick you up by the scruff of your neck. Do you remember that? And I just thought, oh, I could feel this. But seriously, I did think like I've got no idea. That must have been so much work to actually set up the party. It must, and I just hate admin. I thought the amount of admin that must have been involved is just heroic, to do that amount of admin to get it all registered. And I really felt that the whole thing, the kind of boldness, the vision, it was really visionary, I think, to set up a party, the drive. To me, everything was just like the spirit of the suffragettes, not just lobbying and writing and complaining, all the rest of it, actually doing something just so autonomous, I suppose. I thought someone's done all of that hard work. Really, it's actually fairly easy to throw your hat in the ring and just give it a go. I just felt that all the heavy lifting had definitely been done. So I'm really glad that I did. The worst bit, just to get that out of the way, was the admin. But I think that was because I just started like a pretty demanding new job just a couple of months before, and I was just knackered at the end of every day. And then we were having these Zooms. The worst thing was getting these printed. Like, to me, like the deadlines, it was so stressful getting the imprint. What's an imprint? And I did rely very Bernadette and we all supported each other, but I don't think I supported anyone. I was totally relying on Bernadette, ringing her up after the Zoom, saying, "Oh, what do they all say? What have we got to do?" So that, but actually, even that, like we all managed it, didn't we? And organising all the delivery and all of that kind of thing. We raised the money from the crowdfunders. Didn't really need a huge amount to do it. And I think one of the best things, well, I suppose there are two things that I think were really, really great about it. One of the best things was, as Kellie-Jay and Bernadette were both saying, was having a legitimate platform. That was honestly, it really transforms your experience when you're like this side of the. I've got a taste for it now. Been here all day. But when you're this side, and within like they were all these beautiful sounds, like within this church, like you said, language was a bit unorthodox for whatever C of E church I was in. Uh, you didn't have all these trans activists shouting in your face. You could say, and everyone listened and actually quite, clapped and came up at the end. So that was really great. But I think for me, even what topped that was the very much like at Let Women Speak, the stories and, the way people would just, confide things to you of, things that had happened. And I have to be a bit careful because I don't want any sort of confidentiality issues, but things that had been happening in that local area. You're not going to be surprised when I say schools, things happening, like not always with parents knowing, certainly without grandparents knowing, the kind of fears that, the things that I could have just on another week, I'd just been walking past that woman in the street. We wouldn't have had any kind of interaction. And then because we had the stall and the flyers and the flags and all the rest of it, then suddenly hearing these stories, and one in particular that I will share, because the woman that I was speaking to actually didn't even live in the area, but when she saw this and we started chatting about it, she kind of instantly told me about her friend's daughter, aged, I won't say the age, but in her 20s, who just had a double mastectomy, and this was in a very small town in Sussex, along the south coast, a really kind of quiet, genteel sort of little place. And I've said this, so I'm boring myself. I keep saying the same thing over and over again, but it just really took me back to when we were in America. And I think I heard it secondhand. I think you told me, Kellie-Jay, you'd been speaking to these nurses, and the nurses said in Marion County, a hospital in Marion County, where they were doing, I remembered it as 4 double mastectomies a day, but you said it was actually
6. It was 6.
It was 6. So I didn't even I obviously was in such, I couldn't quite compute the number. And then just fast forward those years to, when that was happening in America, and now just in this little town in East Sussex, hearing that within minutes of speaking to this woman. I think once the dust has settled, we are going to have a celebration for all the amazing team, the campaign team, who were absolutely just wonderful to work with. And then we're going to think about what we are going to do locally and keep things going. Maybe in terms of, the council elections, coming up next year, but also just whatever we can do to support. I feel now everyone who shared a story with any of us during those few weeks, I feel that they've put some kind of trust in us that we have to be able to respond to and, keep it going and help to support them with being the change in that sort of local area. So anyway, all credit I think goes to the woman surprisingly on my right.
Oh. So next is local council elections or by-elections. They'll be the things that we'll be looking for people to stand. And I stood in Bristol. I can't tell you what it was like being at the count. It was like being the most hated woman in the room, and I've been in plenty of rooms like that. But this was particularly awful, that officials at that count were giving me such nasty, like prolonged nasty looks that both Iris and I tried to stare them out. We didn't achieve it. They just and clearly this this poison. So just like the woman who is now working at the local uh, GP surgery, once you have an activist there, then everybody has to kowtow, or they have to be silent. So what I am going to be doing is actually leafleting outside of that place, and also personally messaging. So sending letters addressed to each and every staff member because they won't all go along with this. There will be some very unhappy people who feel they have to go along with it. And I feel that there's silent people and there are enforcers. And people will end up being one of those things because you can't passively accept having to wear a pronoun badge or go along with this utter nonsense. You have to have some response to it. Even if I'm afraid to say, for most women, it seems to be to jump on board as a little bit of power to exert over other women and make themselves feel a little bit more special about their own lives. But suffice to say, if you want to do that, if you're somewhere super woke or even just a city, it is. I think it's going to be a lot more difficult. I think what our candidates found is in the sort of smaller towns, um, people were much more receptive to the democratic process and they didn't arrive in tribes. So when I was in Bristol, it was basically a whole audience of Labour members who were more, I mean, they didn't even talk about schools. In those hustings, they didn't talk about schools, they didn't talk about hospitals, they didn't talk about anything that was the most pressing issues for most people. So I'll wrap up.
One question.
Got one question. Can you?
It says, any plans to have Party of Women candidates in the next Scottish election?
100% because it's proportional representation. Yes. And in Wales, and also extending this like the Green Party, like them or loathe them, they are everywhere. And women, we're everywhere too. So, and I can't think of a single country that wouldn't need a party dedicated to women for many, many issues. I said the other day that this particular ideology feels like we're all wearing invisible burqas. And I spoke to someone, one of our candidates actually had been living in a country where she wore a burqa to see what it was like. And the way she described it and not being able to see clearly and not being able to hear properly and not being able to speak and be understood easily just reminded me that that's exactly what we're all facing. And I'm rereading some dystopian books at the moment, and I've just finished with this because I've just finished reading Brave New World, which I think is I think Brave New World is more about what's happening now than 1984. 1984 is all about punishment, but I feel like social media and virtue is all of us taking Soma. I just feel like we are being pleasured into and nicely pleasured into accepting being sort of automatons where we can't think for ourselves. And I honestly would rather be a savage and beaten down than be civilized and silent. Thank you very much.